They called it the stupid trap. For 3 frozen days in December 1944, every soldier who walked past Corporal Daniel Reeves's position made the same joke. "Hey Reeves, when you finish playing with your Christmas decorations, maybe you could help dig some actual fighting positions." His sergeant called it the dumbest thing he'd seen in 2 years of combat. His lieutenant said the mathematical probability of success was essentially 0. Even the men in his own squad mocked him. Private Morrison christened it Reeves's ridiculous Rube Goldberg, and the name stuck like ice to metal in the 14-degree cold. Reeves ignored them all. In his frozen foxhole on the southern perimeter of Bastogne, Belgium, he made final adjustments to the most elaborate defensive trap anyone in the 101st Airborne Division had ever seen. 57 grenades connected by 23 trigger wires arranged in a pattern so complex it looked like madness. But Daniel Reeves wasn't mad. He was a mechanical engineering student from Scranton, Pennsylvania, whose father designed safety systems for coal mines. He understood something his critics didn't. Complex systems could be more reliable than simple ones if they were designed correctly. Sergeant Harold Mackenzie had been the most vocal critic. On December 21st, he delivered what he clearly intended as a final ultimatum. Corporal General McAuliffe just told the Germans to go to hell. We're not surrendering, which means we're fighting. I need every man focused on defensive positions that will actually matter. I'm ordering you to dismantle that contraption, recover those grenades, and prepare to use them the normal way. That's a direct order. Reeves looked at his sergeant for a long moment. "Sergeant, with respect, I need 12 more hours. The trap doesn't work by 0400 tomorrow. I'll dismantle it myself. But if it does work, it could break a German attack before it reaches our main line." Mackenzie's face was stone. "What makes you think the Germans will attack through your sector?" "Because this is the weakest point in our defensive perimeter," Reeves said quietly. "We have the fewest soldiers, the least cover, and the easiest approach terrain. Any competent German commander will identify this as the optimal breakthrough point." The sergeant studied him carefully. 12 hours, Corporal. Nothing happens by 0400 December 22nd. You dismantle that mess. Clear? Clear, Sergeant. But Reeves knew something Mackenzie didn't. Intelligence intercepts indicated a major. German attack was coming at dawn on the 22nd, targeting exactly where his trap was positioned. T wasn't wasting resources. He was positioning a weapon at the exact point where it would matter most. What Reeves had built wasn't just grenades attached to tripwires. It was an integrated defensive system based on redundancy, overlap, and calculated probability. The 57 grenades were positioned in 9 overlapping kill zones arranged in 3 concentric semicircles. Each kill zone contained 6 to 7 grenades at calculated heights and angles. The 23 trigger wires were arranged so that disturbing any single wire would initiate a cascade sequence affecting multiple zones simultaneously. The genius lay in redundancy. If one trigger failed, 3 others provided backup. If one grenade failed to detonate, surrounding blasts would cover its kill zone. If Germans tried to disarm part of the system, that action would trigger other parts they hadn't detected. Reeves had studied mechanical engineering at Penn State. He understood tension calculations, blast radii, fragmentation patterns, and probability mathematics. While other soldiers saw 57 individual weapons, Reeves saw 57 components in a single integrated system that would create overlapping destruction with no gaps and no safe zones. The calculations were precise. Each M2 fragmentation grenade had an effective casualty radius of 15 meters. Positioned optimally, 57 grenades would create a kill zone covering approximately 900 square meters with overlapping blast effects, ensuring anyone in that area would be hit by fragments from at least 3 separate explosions. The sequential timing would prevent Germans from taking cover after initial blasts. But explaining these calculations to cold, hungry soldiers surrounded by German forces proved impossible. They saw complicated when they wanted simple. During the night of December 21st to 22nd, Reeves made final adjustments. He tested each trigger wire's tension, verified each grenade's position, triple-checked the sequential timing mechanisms. At 14 degrees below freezing, metal became brittle. Pins could freeze. Mechanisms could fail. But Reeves had designed for these conditions using techniques his father taught him for ensuring mechanical reliability in extreme cold. At 0300 hours, he heard tracked vehicles in the distance, German armor moving into position. At 0400, exactly as intelligence predicted, German artillery began pounding the southern perimeter. 17 minutes of high explosive shells pulverized American positions. Reeves pressed himself into his foxhole, praying none of the artillery would detonate his carefully positioned grenades prematurely. When the artillery stopped, the silence was more terrifying than the noise. Reeves knew what came next: infantry assault. At 0415, he heard movement ahead. Footsteps in snow, multiple soldiers attempting stealth but unable to silence the crunch of frozen ground. He estimated at least 20 men, possibly more. They were advancing directly toward his position, moving through the exact route he had predicted. German forces used standard infiltration tactics. Experienced soldiers probing defenses, identifying weak points, marking paths for follow-on forces. These weren't inexperienced conscripts. These were veterans who understood combat movement. Reeves watched through darkness as the first Germans entered his trap's outer edge. They moved carefully, professionally, weapons ready. One knelt to examine something, possibly checking for mines. Another signaled soldiers behind him that the approach was clear. 23 German soldiers were now inside the trap's perimeter. Nine grenades had detonated in rapid sequence, creating a wall of fragmentation sweeping through the German formation. But the cascade was just beginning. Blast overpressure from 9 simultaneous explosions triggered pressure-sensitive mechanisms Reeves constructed using salvaged artillery fuse components. These released tension wires connected to 15 more grenades throughout middle and inner rings. German soldiers still alive after initial blasts attempted to scatter, but Reeves had anticipated this. His grenade placement channeled survivors toward the center of the kill zone where the highest concentration of explosives waited. Soldiers seeking cover from outer explosions moved directly into inner ring kill zones. 18 grenades triggered by direct wire connections and blast. Overpressure created concentrated killing field at the German formation S center. The remaining 6 grenades, positioned at kill zone edges to catch fleeing soldiers, detonated last. These were triggered by vibration-sensitive mechanisms Reeves built using firing pin springs and carefully balanced weights. 54 of 57 grenades functioned exactly as designed. 3 failed due to defective fuses, but their failure was irrelevant. The entire sequence from initial trigger to final detonation lasted 19 seconds. In those 19 seconds, approximately 427 pounds of high explosive and 17,000 steel fragments swept through a 900 square meter kill zone where 23 German soldiers had been advancing. When smoke cleared, the ground was torn apart. Equipment, weapons, and bodies scattered across the entire approach route. Not a single German soldier survived. Sergeant Mackenzie climbed out of his foxhole 50 yards away and stared at the devastation. He walked slowly toward Reeves's position, expression unreadable. How many grenades? 57, Sergeant. And how many Germans? 23 confirmed, Sergeant. Possibly one or two more in crater zones where I can't identify remains. Mackenzie stared at the destruction. In 19 seconds, yes, Sergeant. The sergeant turned to look at Reeves. I called your trap stupid. Yes, Sergeant, you did. I was wrong. That wasn't stupid. That was the most effective defensive system I've ever seen. Word spread through the American perimeter within hours. Officers from other companies examined the kill zone, trying to understand how one corporal with 57 grenades eliminated an entire German infiltration element without firing a single rifle shot. Lieutenant Walsh, who had questioned the trap's value, conducted detailed inspection of trigger mechanisms. He found remains of primary wire, backup systems, cascade triggers, all exactly as Reeves described. But the most significant reaction came from German forces. The 26th Volksgrenadier Division immediately halted further attacks through the southern perimeter. Captured after-action reports described the incident as American minefield with delayed triggers. German intelligence concluded Americans had developed new defensive weapons combining mines, artillery, and automated triggering. They had no idea it was one corporal with standard-issue grenades and 3 days of creative engineering. The psychological impact exceeded tactical results. German commanders, already frustrated by American resistance at Bastogne, now believed defenders possessed advanced technologies. This perception contributed to German hesitation and delayed subsequent attacks, buying crucial time for surrounded American forces. On December 23rd, weather cleared enough for air supply drops. Colonel Steve Chapuis personally delivered a case of grenades to Reeves's position. Corporal Reeves, I understand you can make better use of these than most men. How many more traps can you build? With this many, I could build 3 more systems covering our most vulnerable approaches. You have 4 days until I expect the Germans to attack again. Build as many as you can. And Corporal, I'm assigning you 3 assistants. Teach them how your system works. The 3 soldiers assigned were the same men who had mocked his first trap most severely. Private Morrison, who named it the stupid trap, volunteered first. Lieutenant, I want to learn how to build what Corporal Reeves built. I was wrong. I want to make sure I'm not wrong about anything else. Over 4 days, Reeves constructed 2 additional traps and partially completed a 3rd. He taught his assistants principles of redundancy, overlapping kill zones, sequential triggering, and failure compensation. Soldiers who ridiculed him days earlier now listened with complete attention. Morrison proved exceptionally quick to learn. He understood Reeves's trap, succeeded not through complexity, but through careful planning. Every grenade had specific purpose. Every trigger wire served multiple functions. Every backup compensated for predicted failure modes. The second trap on the western perimeter used 48 grenades in configuration adapted to specific terrain. Reeves taught Morrison how to calculate grenade placement based on ground slope, vegetation cover, and expected enemy approach patterns. The third trap on northern perimeter incorporated lessons from the first system, using 62 grenades covering an even larger kill zone. On December 26th, German forces launched major assault on the western perimeter, concentrating exactly where Reeves's second trap waited. 29 German soldiers advancing in pre-dawn darkness triggered the trap. The cascade killed all 29 in 23 seconds. The third trap triggered December 28th by German patrol attempting night infiltration. 18 Germans died in 17 seconds. Survivors far enough from kill zones to escape reported to commanders that Americans had surrounded Bastogne with automated explosive fields that detonated in chain reactions impossible to predict or avoid. Intercepted German radio communications revealed growing reluctance to conduct infiltration operations. One captured message stated the American defenses employ explosive traps of unknown design. Conventional mine-clearing procedures ineffective. Infantry casualties exceed acceptable parameters. Recommend suspension of close infiltration tactics pending countermeasure development. This was exactly the psychological impact Reeves hoped to achieve. By eliminating German infiltration elements so decisively, he forced German commanders to question their tactics. This hesitation, combined with improving weather allowing American air support, contributed to German failure at best. After the siege lifted in late December, military intelligence conducted extensive interviews with Reeves. They wanted to understand not just how he built it, but why he conceived it. The resulting report became required reading at infantry officer training schools. The report identified key principles. Redundancy, where every critical function had multiple backups. Overlapping coverage where no kill zone relied on single grenades. Sequential timing preventing targets from taking cover. And failure compensation allowing the system to function, even if 30% of components failed. Most importantly, the report emphasized Reeves's ability to think systematically rather than individually. Most soldiers thought of grenades as individual weapons for individual targets. Reeves thought of them as components in integrated systems where the whole exceeded the sum of parts. Major General Maxwell Taylor awarded Reeves the Bronze Star for meritorious achievement. The citation read, Corporal Daniel Reeves, through exceptional ingenuity and technical skill, designed and implemented defensive systems that eliminated 70 enemy soldiers and prevented multiple infiltration attempts. His innovations contributed significantly to successful defense of Bastogne and demonstrated extraordinary technical competence under combat conditions. But Reeves later said the award he valued most came from Sergeant Mackenzie, who after the battle simply said, "Reeves, I was wrong. Your trap wasn't stupid. It was brilliant, and I was an idiot for not seeing it." The trap's success had broader implications. The Army Ordnance Department commissioned a study on optimal defensive employment of hand grenades. The study concluded coordinated simultaneous detonation of multiple grenades could achieve effectiveness 3 to 4 times higher than sequential individual throws. This finding influenced development of the M18A1 Claymore mine in the 1950s. The Claymore's principle of directional fragmentation covering wide areas, without requiring manual throwing, was direct descendant of concepts Reeves demonstrated at Bastogne. German military analysis after the war devoted significant attention to what they called American defensive mine systems. German tactical manuals were updated to warn about complex triggered, explosive traps that could cascade across large areas. The Germans never realized what they feared was one corporal's improvised system built with standard equipment. Years later, in 1968, a military historian interviewed Reeves about his design. The historian asked why other soldiers with similar backgrounds hadn't developed comparable systems. "Most soldiers thought about grenades the way they'd been trained," Reeves explained. "Throw it at the enemy. But I thought about grenades the way my father thought about mine safety systems. What happens if one component fails? How do you ensure the system still functions? How do you create redundancy without creating unreliability? Understanding and applying are different things," he continued. "Most people saw 57 grenades as 57 chances to kill an enemy. I saw 57 grenades as one system with 57 components." That's a fundamental difference in thinking. Daniel Reeves returned to Penn State after the war and completed his engineering degree. He worked for DuPont for 37 years, designing safety systems for chemical plants. He held 43 patents, all related to fail-safe systems and redundant safety mechanisms. His obituary in 2007 mentioned his Bronze Star, but focused more on his industrial safety innovations. In 1986 interview, Reeves reflected on his Bastogne trap. "People always want technical details. How did you position grenades? How did you calculate trigger points? But that's not what made it work." What made it work was understanding you can't control everything in combat. Things fail. Conditions change. But if you design for failure, if you build in redundancy, if you think systematically, you can create something that works even when individual components don't. They mocked his stupid grenade trap, called it ridiculous, a waste of resources, ordered him to dismantle it. Then it killed 23 German soldiers in 19 seconds, and the mockery stopped. The trap killed 70 Germans total. It delayed attacks, created psychological impact exceeding tactical effects, and demonstrated principles that influenced military doctrine for decades. All because one corporal refused to accept that conventional wisdom was the only wisdom. Daniel Reeves proved that sometimes the stupid idea isn't stupid at all. Sometimes it's brilliance disguised as foolishness, waiting for circumstances to reveal its true nature. Sometimes innovation requires enduring mockery from people who lack vision to see what's possible. The Germans called it an automated minefield. The Americans called it the trap that saved Bastogne's southern perimeter. But really, it was proof that one person with technical knowledge, tactical insight, and absolute conviction can achieve results entire organizations never imagined. They mocked his stupid grenade trap until it killed 23 Germans in 19 seconds. Then they stopped mocking and started learning. And warfare changed because one corporal understood that effectiveness matters more than convention, that results matter more than criticism, and that innovation requires courage to build what others can't imagine. The stupid trap wasn't stupid. It was brilliant. And in 19 seconds of cascading explosions, proved that sometimes the greatest ideas are the ones that sound craziest until they work perfectly.